Good evening and welcome to blackdoctor.org. I'm your host this evening, Shamika Rhymes. And let us know where you're watching from and drop that in the chat. And make sure you put your questions in the chat because we want you to join the conversation with us. So, tonight is part 2 of our panel discussion on diabetes awareness in our community. In honor of World Diabetes Day, which is today, and it's also November is Diabetes Awareness Month. So we are focused on diabetes and making sure that you have all the information that you need. So we're going to continue tonight to explore the unique challenges faced by individuals living with diabetes, including the role of diet, mental health, and community support in managing the condition. And our panel will share some practical tips on making sustainable lifestyle changes, navigating food deserts, and the importance of healthcare. So let me introduce you to our panel. We have Carolina Castillo joining us again. She's a registered dietitian at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. Hello.
Hi, Shamika. Thank you so much for having me.
And we have Pamela Gibson Flowers. She's a patient advocate, and she has a type of diabetes that I had not heard of until today. So she's going to share more about that. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing it right. Latent autoimmune diabetes in adults since 2016. And her daughter has been a juvenile diabetic since age 9. Welcome, Pamela.
Hi, how are you doing? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing well. So I want to remind everyone in the chat to share this video with your network. And if you haven't caught up on part 1, you can still catch up on that after this. So don't worry. All right, we'll just jump into the questions. So this question is for both of you. And so we'll just kind of, whoever wants to answer first, go right ahead. Or we can be like a class and I can point you out, however. So why do you think diabetes is such a significant issue in the Black community? And what are the unique challenges faced?
Do you want to go, Pamela?
I'll let you go since you're the doctor.
Well, I'm not the doctor. I'm the dietitian. Something that we know, it's well, I guess we don't know why, but genetically, Black Americans do have a more disposition, to be or to have diabetes, in their genetics. But I don't think we have found a reason why specifically this type of population gets targeted.
Okay, thank you. How about you, Pamela?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think this whole kind of like metabolic issue, like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and diabetes, kind of is genetically in the community, but is also a lack of really healthy foods. Or, I think that the way that we eat, I'm half Puerto Rican and half Black, so Caribbean people eat a lot of rice, eat a lot of, starchy foods. I think the Black community does the same thing. Mm-hmm. And nobody really explains why you should not, or why you shouldn't have so many sugary things. So this buildup of sugar and starches in your bloodstream really takes its toll after a while.
Absolutely. I wanted, Pamela, if you're okay with it, can you share a little bit about your journey with LADA, or should I call it LADA? I don't know if
they call it LADA.
LADA, okay. Yeah. As well as your experience as a mother supporting your daughter through her diagnosis and complications. And hello again, Gregory.
Hey, good evening.
Okay, so my journey started when my daughter was age 9. She's 36 now, and she came down with diabetes. And so the journey for her has been very long. At this point now, she's on dialysis and in need of a kidney and pancreas transplant. She has eye issues, heart issues. Diabetes has just raged through her body all this time. Mm-hmm. Myself in 2016, now I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. I would say like maybe in 2012, about 12 or 11. And, I took metformin. I decided to lose weight. I lost 35 pounds. I exercised. I was feeling good. But I was still very sluggish. And I saw a doctor in New York at Lenox Hill. And she said, well, know, your A1C is still 10 and your BMI is good. I want to give you this test. And I think it's a C-peptide test and or an antibody test. I'm not sure which one she gave me, but it turned out that I had latent autoimmune diabetes in adults, which means that I turned from a type 2 to a type 1. My pancreas was now dying, and my body was attacking my insulin cells. And if she hadn't given me that test, I would have still been trying to take metformin and trying to do whatever I could to like get my A1C down, and it would not have worked. So I do like to spread the word that you should get this test. If you feel like you are doing the right things to make the changes and your A1C is not coming down, some doctors don't really know about this. Just say, look, can you give me a test? Maybe I have diabetes. I think they also call it 1.5. You know, it's like right in the middle. So now I'm on a pump. I have a glucose monitor, and I'm living with no pancreas. And so it has been a tough journey these last couple of years for me and my family. But I have to keep my eyes on what I'm eating, what I'm doing, which we all do. But when you don't have a pancreas, even more.
Thank you for sharing that. Let me catch Gregory up real quick. So let me ask you this question since you just joined us. And Gregory's a registered men's health dietitian. So you were here, and Carolina, you both were here for part 1. So welcome back. Why do you think that diabetes is such a significant issue in the Black community? And what do you think are the unique challenges faced?
Well, thanks again for having me tonight. Good evening, everyone. So I think it's really important because it affects us at a higher rate in general. I know when it comes to men, for example, I work with a lot of men, and we're 4 times as likely to develop erectile dysfunction due to complications of diabetes. I think historically speaking, there's been a lot of resistance to Black people in the healthcare system, due to a lot of shady things being done in studies from the past, to, family members telling you to keep things on the hush. You don't want nobody to know about it. So I think that there have been some barriers to stop people from receiving the kind of care that they need. And I think it's really important because historically our rates just naturally have been higher.
And I just thought about this. This is totally random, but I first heard about diabetes reading the Babysitter's Club books. And of course, those characters were all white. But that's how I found out about diabetes at such a young age. Pamela mentioned managing diet. So let's talk about what role does diet play in managing diabetes, and how can individuals make sustainable changes? Carolina, we'll start with you.
Yes, thank you. So I think that diet plays a very, very, and I think Gregory would agree, and Pamela as well, plays a very, very important role. It makes, you want to make sure that you're combining the right foods, right, so that they get processed and digested in a certain way so that you prevent those high blood sugars. One of the things that I always recommend to my patients is I want to make sure that they understand the difference. It's a lot about education, right? And knowing how to make sure that you manage your plate, right? So we want to make sure that they know what the difference is, between simple carbohydrates versus complex carbohydrates. And it does seem very simple, but I think that when it comes down to it, it can get a little bit complicated because you have to know how to, first separate the food and then how to put it together on a plate, right? So I think that, it's a lot. Knowing how to, live a healthy lifestyle with a healthy diet, it's really, really important. Maybe not so obviously to, avoid the high blood sugars, but to make sure that they're in control. Because at the end of the day, I tell patients it's not about, that your blood sugars should be high, but they also cannot be low. So it's basically making sure that they're in a balanced state as much as you can.
Okay, thank you. Gregory, how about
No,
you? What role does diet play in managing diabetes?
a huge role. And before I even mention that, I don't know if I made it clear already that I have type 1 diabetes as it stands right now. So I
Oh,
currently live with diabetes myself. And this is actually what was the entry point for me to enter the healthcare profession to become a registered dietitian. I had a wonderful encounter with my dietitian at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, and the rest is history now. And that's really what opened up the door for me to become a dietitian, and been living with it for about 12 years now.
mhm.
So food plays a huge role. You
Yeah.
know, food plays a very big role. I can feel the difference between when I'm eating generally a healthier, lower carb type of meal, higher protein, versus when I eat a meal that's high in sugar, high in fat, right?
Mhm.
So the diet plays a big role. Carbohydrates specifically will directly impact the blood sugar. But let's talk about dietary fats for a second,
Mhm.
right? People don't really understand that dietary fats can also increase your blood sugars as well and can keep them elevated for a longer bit of time or longer period of time. So, and if you're on insulin medication or other types of medicine, that's something to take in mind. Not only your carbohydrate intake, but also to your dietary fat intake. So, for example, if I eat a pizza that's high in carbs and high in fat, it's most likely to not only spike my blood sugar, but also to kind of keep it up there for a good while before the body naturally decreases it. Or if you take insulin, before that insulin takes effect. So, we can go into a whole lot of discussion when it comes to diet, but there's a lot to talk about. But diet, yes, has a huge role.
And thank you for sharing about your own diagnosis. I don't think you mentioned that last time.
No, I was trying to save it for today. Yeah.
Pamela, what role has diet played for you and your daughter in managing diabetes? And what adjustments have been helpful?
Well, yeah, like they said, diet is everything. I mean, because you don't have a pancreas, right? And that's the organ that God gave you to help, turn the sugars in your body into energy for your muscles. So if you don't have that, you have to really watch what you eat. I want to share something. Recently, I read about, and they're dietitians, so I'll ask them also about making your carbs cold. Like if you have rice or spaghetti and you put it in the refrigerator and get it cold and then eat it after that, you can even heat it up after that. That breaks down the starch. It breaks down the starches some. So I've been doing that, and I find that my blood sugar doesn't spike as much when I have some rice. Um, I think that everybody wants to eat what they want to eat, right?
Mhm.
Especially Caribbean food is like amazing to me, like arroz en gandules, all that good stuff. I gotta have it, rice and beans. So I've tried to make like changes, my mother, who's probably watching will just probably gag, but instead of rice with my beans, I'll make quinoa. And quinoa really takes the flavor of whatever you eat with it.
It
So to
does.
me, it tastes just as good because the real flavor is in the beans.
Mhm.
Um, the key is to really, you know, make the food that you like, but make it in a conscious way. Like I try to stay away from potatoes, from rice. Even sushi is great. I love sushi, but my blood sugar will spike from that white rice. And I think they put a little sugar in that rice too. And
Mhm.
that's another thing that people don't realize. There's a little bit of sugar in everything. Like you don't realize it, but sugar is there. Um, Salt also, you got to watch your salt. For me, it's a whole metabolic thing. I have high blood pressure and I have high cholesterol. And another thing is to take your medicine. I think that people, especially in our community, they don't want to take those medicines. It's
Mhm.
like, and men, I mean, I had to, twist my husband's arm to take some high blood pressure medicine. They just, nobody wants to take that kind of stuff, but it's there to help you to live a richer, fuller life. You got to take your meds. And this idea of insulin being so high is ridiculous because you definitely need your insulin, as Gregory will attest to. I mean, you can't be rationing it or, deciding you're not going to take some. I mean, I pretty much eat everything, but I can check my blood sugar on my phone, on my watch. I know what's going on with it. Like right now, it's a little bit high. So I can take some insulin you know um
Mhm.
you just gotta watch it. It's so annoying. And I'll just say this about my daughter. Unfortunately, when you start so young,
Mhm.
she became a teenager, and who wants to like count the carbs on their hamburger with their friends and then wait 15
Yeah.
minutes to eat it? And then, you're not doing that. So unfortunately, in that span of teenage years and young adult years, she did a lot of damage to herself because really that sort of like really regimented type of way you have to be with your food is hard for young people. But you
Mhm.
got to be regimented. You really got to say, okay, this is what I got. This is what I got to do. I want to live. I don't want to lose my sight. I don't want to lose the feeling in my fingers. So I'm just going to eat this way. You're not going to die if you can't have that mac and cheese.
Yeah, that's so real.
Yeah.
I remember a lot of times in college. College was probably the worst period of time for my blood sugar. And that's
Mm,
just dealing with a lot of factors, whether it's just growing up as a young man, whether it's just the influences around, whether it's food in the dining hall, having to go back home to re-up on my insulin when my prescription needs to be refilled, the stress, the lack of sleep, the late night studying, and etc. So that was a really tough period of time. And you have to come to a point where it's just like, you know what, this is my lot, this is my body, it's not your body, nobody else has to deal with this around me. Yeah, it may suck to a lot of people. That's how I felt for a while, but I just had to just grow up and realize like this is just my life, and this
Mm.
is just what it's going to have to take for me to be the best that I can be. Because yes, that person over there can do whatever they want because their body's producing their insulin and taking care of it. They can be as mindless as they want to be.
right.
But as far as me and my body, I can't. It's tough, but then once you actually get a good system in, you take it and you end up a little grateful. You're grateful that you have the ability to be conscious of making better decisions for your body. Grateful for the ability to even know what's happening internally. Like these are all things that ultimately at least for me, I was grateful for, and I am grateful for.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I was curious because I've seen that same thing about I saw it I think on YouTube about the rice if you put it in the refrigerator. So I was wanting to know if what Carolina and Gregory thought of that. Does that work? I mean, it's working for Pamela. I'm just curious if there's
Yeah.
a science to it or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
Have you heard that, Carolina?
I've heard about it. I've never tried it, and I don't recommend it.
Yeah.
Just because I mean, I guess I would have to read up on any studies if
Yeah.
if studies been done. I've heard of other hacks as well. For example, if you drink while you're eating, if you're drinking, if you put a little bit of apple cider vinegar to your water as you're eating, your meal, it also prevents, a higher spike, or it'll help you
Okay.
to have a less spike. So there are a little bit of hacks here and there. Overall, at the end of the day, I think it does come down to portioning your meals and how you combine them, as well as the exercise, that everything together, kind of do help the most,
Yeah,
besides those little hacks.
I agree. I think at most all of this is more anecdotal than supported by research and evidence currently as it stands. Now, Pamela, are you hearing that in regards to starch or just all carbohydrates?
No, I think I had heard about rice and about like pasta. Like
Okay,
if
so
you
starch.
just cool it down,
Okay.
then it kind of takes it. And the last time I did that with some spaghetti, actually it was better. It
Okay.
did kind of, I thought, okay, well, maybe this is working. I know it gets to the point in your life that you just say, okay, I'll just try everything. Let me just try
Yeah.
because it can't
Yeah.
hurt.
Yes.
It can only help. Um,
I think that because if it were like all carbohydrates, I was gonna bring up ice cream, for example. And I was gonna say
no.
ice cream will send my blood sugar straight through the roof.
Oh
So
my God.
I'm
Well,
not
that's the
even
sugar too.
correct.
I mean,
Correct.
I
So,
think this
yeah,
has to do with the whole breakdown of starch
of the
in
starches. Okay.
in the yeah in the meals. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know. I try to be conscious. It's not easy. But anybody can do it. You just can make different choices. Like I like to have a cocktail,
Yeah.
I like it and I need it sometimes, but I don't drink rum anymore.
Mhm.
Try to stay away from the brown liquor. I might have a vodka drink and have it with salsa. I really have to like really think. I think that's the key. And I think they would agree. You just have to think about what you're eating. Like mindless eating has got to go out the window. You can't sit there with a bag of chips. But if you really have to have chips, you need to look on the bag, see how many chips, about how many chips is, 20 carbs or whatever they say, and just take that amount and be happy with yourself and take the carbs for it. If you can just do away with chips, that's even better. But, I think to say you can't have anything is like people aren't going to do that.
Yeah.
My daughter was not going to do that. There was a lot of times where I would say, well, you can't eat that. And she'd say, well, I took my insulin for it. I can eat it now. Okay. All right. But another thing I want to say is that, like what you were saying, Gregory, when you're in school, eating well does cost more. Costs a little more, costs it's a little. So you're in college and you're like, out and about, to get that salad, to get that, that healthy meal is a little bit of an extra. Although, like if you go to In-N-Out, you can get a burger with lettuce and no bun.
Yeah.
There's a lot of little hacks you could do in your life to still eat the things that you like, but eat them in the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Let's see. Well, since we're talking about food, what are some culturally relevant tips for preparing meals that are both healthy and delicious? I mean, you already mentioned one swap with the instead of rice, the quinoa.
Quinoa is really good.
Yeah, yeah.
It is good.
It is
I
good.
agree.
It is good.
Charlene is
Yeah,
like,
I've been.
not really.
It is. I've been doing the swap for my burrito bowls because I'm like I got
Okay.
to do better. So, but how about you, Gregory? What do you think?
I think
Some tips for preparing meals.
I think the more dietary fiber we can add to our meals, I think that'll really help. So, say for example, I tell people all the time, especially when you have diabetes, a lot of people like stir fry. I'm sorry, a lot of people like pasta, right? They like pasta, they like chicken in their pasta, they like cheese in their pasta, and then just to make the meal look cute, they might throw 3 pieces of broccoli on the pasta, like just like a little
A
decoration,
Make
little
it look
garnish.
cute.
just a little garnish, right? So I try to help people understand how about we turn this pasta more so into a vegetable stir fry. And instead of the broccoli being the 3 pieces of garnish, the pasta is more so of an addition to the base of the vegetables. That
Mm.
way you have the same ingredients, but the portions you just radically shifted. And in shifting those portions, you're consuming less carbohydrates, more dietary fiber, which is going to in turn be more beneficial for your blood sugar depending on the amount that you eat. So it's for me, my instruction is really helping people to find ways to add more dietary fiber to their meals.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So is that like 2 strands of pasta? And the rest is the pasta is the garnish.
Yeah, if you're using penne noodles, then just a serving of that.
Okay.
Maybe instead of like the ratio being like 3 units of pasta to 1 serving of veggies, it can be 50-50. Maybe
Okay.
it can be like 60-40, 60 veggies, 40 pasta. That way it still feels like a pasta, but like you can tell that it has more vegetables in it.
Now, what if you use the protein pasta or the plant-based pasta? Is
Yeah.
that better?
That it can be better.
Okay.
Sometimes they do have more fiber in them. Not gonna lie to you, maybe a little bit more protein depending on the brand. But yeah, that could be a very good and suitable option as
Yeah.
well.
Okay. All right. Carolina, how about you?
Yeah, so with those types of pastas, you just want to be mindful in reading the ingredients list, just because sometimes it'll say spinach pasta, but it's still a whole wheat pasta with
Mm.
sprinkled spinach on it.
Mm.
So it's not necessarily a spinach pasta, right? So
Yeah.
just be mindful of that.
Yeah.
Some of the things that I do recommend are when it's rice, for example, or let's stay with the pasta because we're talking about the pasta. So there's some noodles called shirataki noodles.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
And I always kind of tell patients, yes, they don't have, and I like them. I buy them. They're very low in carbohydrates. So I always tell patients, why don't we mix them? So you'll mix a little bit of the serving from the real pasta that you like. And then for volume wise, you'll mix them with the shirataki noodles together. I always, again, make sure that they're having some fiber, like Gregory said, in terms of you can always add, for example, I always tell them to dice or blend the cauliflower, kind of like, or use cauliflower rice. And then if they're having a soup, just adding a little bit to the soup, something that has a little bit more fiber. And also with the rice, I also tell them to kind of do, half portion of the cauliflower rice and half portion of maybe a brown rice, right? So you can still get the sense, that, flavor and texture that the rice gives you, but volume wise and eye wise and stomach wise, it'll look a little bit fuller, right? So, and it is a lot mental, right? Because when you look at the plate, you already decided what you're going to eat and how much, right? And how you're going to start it. So to make it more appealing, I think, those are two of the things that I like to, recommend.
Okay. What do we do for Thanksgiving? We've got Thanksgiving coming up, and everybody's cooking all the things with all the the gravies and the mashed potatoes, the rice. Like, what should diabetics or those that are trying to prevent their A1C from going up, what should they be eating or avoiding at the Thanksgiving table?
Wow, that's a tough one. I don't,
Well, go ahead, Pamela.
I was just going to say, like, I would think portion control, maybe, some more vegetables, or bring a vegetable dish to your family event.
Yeah.
But like, just don't eat anything the rest of the day. Like, just wait till dinner, because I think that a lot of people are just going to eat what they, going to eat their comfort foods with their family. Just don't eat as much. Maybe change the way that your plate looks. Because I know my plate in the past has looked like a whole big plate of carbs, like just a big plate of carbs. And no, can't do it.
Yeah.
I would also just kind of add, I would kind of go and instead of say don't eat throughout the day and wait to kind of just having a feast. You're going to have turkey for 4 more days after Thanksgiving, right? Everybody has leftovers somewhere. So you're going to have that meal for the next maybe couple of days. So try to at least have some kind of breakfast, high protein lunch, so that you're not super starving by, dinner time. And then once your, dinner is getting ready and you're serving yourself a plate, try to make sure that you eat the protein first. Try to make it the best, obviously, for portioning sizes. But if, let's say, you got the potatoes and the mashed potatoes and the sweet potatoes and the gravy and everything, or the ham, I always tell patients, go for the protein first, hopefully, and eat very slowly, so that by the time that you do the protein first, the veggies, and maybe you can get, to the carbs, you're not hopefully as hungry and you're not overeating those carbohydrates. That's kind of one of the things that
That's a good idea.
it might help.
I totally agree. And I would also encourage people to, how I'm going to say this, make the day a moment, but make the moment a day. So celebrate the whole day, but make the meal a moment, right?
Okay.
So essentially that's meaning to enjoy the day that it brings. Thanksgiving, families around, you're off of work, off of school, whatever the case may be. So yes, that's the day. But like the Thanksgiving meal, like that's a moment, that's a meal, right? So it doesn't have to be so centralized on trying to fill yourself up as much as possible. So if we can make the moment the day and a meal the moment, I know I need to go write that down somewhere. I think
we got you.
I agree. It should not be just about the food. It really isn't, right? It's about being with your people and your loved ones. Absolutely. And enjoying each other. So you don't want to feel sick afterwards. And I can tell you, a lot of people think, oh, it's the turkey that's making me tired. No, it's all the carbs. It's all the carbs in your body, like working overtime to
Mhm.
process those carbs.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know it because I don't have a pancreas, and I can see my blood sugar just going up and up and up, and I have to keep giving the insulin
Yeah.
and chasing it to make it right. But if you don't do that, your body, I mean, you just got a little pancreas.
Yeah.
It just can't do it. And, so yeah, you're exhausted because your body's exhausted from really trying to like process all that food. And eventually, it could just give out. You can wind up on insulin.
I
You know,
second that.
you're not going to be type 2 forever.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I second that. There's nothing like chasing your blood sugar
Mm.
all day after a Thanksgiving meal or all night. It's not fun. I've done it as well, Pamela. So I'm with you on that. It's just not fun. It's not enjoyable. Like there's so many other things that you would much rather spend your time doing. So, just treat it like a normal meal. Take your insulin accordingly to what you ate. If you have a sensor and a pump and you have that technology to where you can monitor your blood sugar, take a look at where your numbers are at and adjust accordingly, right? But then practically, if we're eating a plate, if you can really aim to have like Carolina said, a protein on that plate, each plate, also some form of vegetable, if you can aim to have that at each plate as well, again, that will just increase the total fiber that you're eating, helping you to decrease on some of those other starchy vegetables and other very starchy foods that are typically associated with Thanksgiving meals. Take your time, get a plate, enjoy the plate, and before you go back, really assess to see, okay, where's my blood sugar at right now? Also, too, like where's my hunger at right now? Am I even hungry right now?
Mhm.
Right? Is it just more convenient for me to go grab another plate right now? How about I delve into some conversation for a second, play a little game for a second, and then maybe 10 minutes later see where I'm at? Right? Just more of that intuitive eating, that mindfulness can be applied.
Yeah.
These are some great tips. Well, how can individuals navigate the challenges of food deserts, because that's a real thing, and limited access to fresh produce in some communities? Carolina, we'll start with you.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. How can individuals navigate the challenges of food deserts and limited access to fresh produce in some communities?
Yeah, so usually I mean, let me just put my thoughts in place. So that's very tough, right? And unfortunately, these people, they don't have a lot of options, right, to buy fresh produce. I always try to, when the income is limited, right? I always tell them go for the frozen vegetables. So sometimes they are cheaper than the fresh produce, and that's one of the ways they can, they can be live in your freezer for a very long time. So I would just, make sure that they check, their frozen section. And also if it's anything that's canned, right, because it also lives in your pantry for a long time, just make sure that they either one, make sure that choose a low sodium option, and if in case it's not a low sodium option, then rinse it out. Literally just put the beans in a bowl, rinse them out a little bit, and then drain them, and that way you can get a little bit out of the salt out of them. But I think one of the best options would be frozen, vegetables and fruits.
Okay, thank you. I
Yeah.
want to talk. Well, Gregory, did you want to input on that?
I agree totally. And I think people demonize canned and frozen foods all the time. They all have their different culinary uses. They are all nutrient dense. There's not less nutrients in a canned food in comparison to a fresh or frozen. So I think that's really important to know. So I think Carolina did a great job with explaining all of that.
I am team frozen foods,
Oh, yeah.
vegetables, and fruits.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to add that, if you live in a community where there's a community garden, like get involved with that. And, I know in a lot of, I know in New York and a lot of lower income areas, there's usually a little community garden there somewhere. And if there isn't one, maybe look to start one in your community to educate children and to, just be able to eat better and, save some money, because a lot of times the people who work in the community gardens and the community garden themselves hand out fresh vegetables and things like that to the community. It's a good thing. People don't really think about their community gardens, but they're there to help people who are in food deserts.
Yeah.
That's a great reminder, because I forgot about those. So thank you for reminding us about that. I know we're running out of time, but I do want to talk about how diabetes, living with diabetes can impact your mental health. So why is it so important to address this aspect of care? I'm going to start with you, Pamela. How has living with diabetes, and like you said, without your pancreas, how has that affected your mental health?
Well, for me, it's a little different because, my daughter has had so many issues. She's gone through diabetic ketoacidosis, several times in her life. And so as a mother, when I came down with it, I didn't think of myself having a hard time, because I know what kind of a hard time she's had. So maybe for me, I felt like, well, I don't really deserve to feel sorry for myself because I see what she's been going through. But I think that it's a really good thing for you to talk to somebody, because it is a lifestyle change and you can really feel bad about yourself. I know that my daughter, just like you said, Gregory, for a long time went through, why me? Why can't I do what my friends do? It was really tough for her. And I know that she talked to people. I did talk to a therapist when it first happened, because I was dealing with her issues, and then I was dealing with myself, and a little bit of a guilt feeling that, well, maybe she got this from me. Maybe this is something, even though I didn't get it until much later in my life, in my 50s. Maybe it was something in me that gave it to her. But I mean, I can't feel guilty about that. That's the way of the genes. Yeah, whenever you have an upset in your life and you have a life change, why not talk to somebody who could really put things in perspective for you? I think it's really important, especially if you come down with LADA, because it is a life-changing thing that day. When children come down with diabetes, you take them to the hospital, they get diagnosed, and then life changes. They have to learn how to give themselves shots. You have to learn how to feed them. You have to learn how to adjust to this type of living. I kind of knew it from her, raising her, but my life changed like overnight. I had to figure out insulin. I had to figure out numbers for myself. I had to stop drinking pina coladas. I mean, a lot of things changed, and talking to somebody and saying, look, this really sucks. Why did this happen to me? You get a good perspective in talking to somebody. I mean, it's a life change, and it's a journey that will go on until your last day.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that it is very imperative to address the mental health side of things. There's that initial, oh my goodness, like this is a lot all at once. Then there's a phase of that self-sabotage where it's just like, I don't even care anymore. I'm just so frustrated. There's also that, okay, I'm finally at peace with it. But even being at peace with it, there are still going to be issues, still going to be life changes. And I remember myself, getting married was a big one for me personally, because my wife already knew I had diabetes while we were dating, but now she's assuming a bigger role in my diabetes care, right? And even me before getting married, having to trust and believe that, what, this person who I'm going to be with for the rest of my life now is going to care as much as I do for my body. And I have to kind of show her how to do certain things. When my blood sugar drops, what to do. When my sugar is too high, what to do. Now we have a daughter. When my sugar is low around my daughter, there's all of these different things, right? And it's really easy for somebody to get into their heads about it. And knowing a trusted professional that you can talk to is important, especially if you feel like you need that. I'm grateful that at this point right now, just in the diabetes sense of life, I haven't really needed like professional mental health counseling or et cetera, but people do. And, I'm aware that people do, and I always encourage it when they do. But yeah, it's tough. It's taxing on all parts of your body, including your mental.
Mhm. Carolina, did you want to add anything?
I just think it's yes, I mean it's the first, no, I wouldn't say the first, but I think that your mental health comes first, because that will determine your, how well you take care of yourself. So, like Gregory said, you have to go through these phases, right? Maybe denial, shock, denial, hopefully in the end acceptance, but one doesn't work without the other. You have to have good mental health and invest your time in that, or figure out some way that where you can get the help before you can then take care of your physical self.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, how can family and friends best support someone living with diabetes? I mean, Gregory, you mentioned having to show your wife what to do if your sugar drops or
Yeah.
something. What
Yeah.
are some other ways family and friends can support?
I think they can support oftentimes by just listening.
Mhm.
It's so easy for someone to think they know what they're talking about when it comes to managing diabetes. There have been times where friends and family members are trying to force something, like I'm eating a chocolate bar or something like that, and they're like arguing with me that I should not eat this when my sugar is literally low and this is the only sugar source that's around. Right. So I'm already low in the blood sugar. My brain is not working properly. Now I have to like convince you that I can have this. And it's just like, this is not even your body, So oftentimes it's about listening, right? And really trusting the person with diabetes to know what they're talking about and know what they're doing. Now, there is a level of accountability that the person may entrust to you and say, hey, like, I need help with this. If you see me doing this, then, give me a nudge on the shoulder. Right. But then again, that comes down to what listening, right? Listening is still going to be an essential piece in that. So I'm just going to say listening is a very big deal.
Okay. Carolina?
I also think that, it's good if you talk about it as a family and kind of say things like, this might not apply to the household, but I need you to give your support to my decisions that I have to do. So maybe your plate, I kind of talk about this with, for example, moms or parents, basically, right? And then they say something like, well, I cannot not have candy in the house, because then my kids will, you know, uh, say something about it. And I just think that it's really important for you as a parent, or as a family, right? Or whoever you live with, to sit down with them and say, I need your support, like Gregory said, in the decisions that I make, right? Yes, please be on the lookout for, if you see me, these are the symptoms, right? If something really bad is happening. But I do need your support in the decisions that I make, right? So that, maybe the household doesn't have to completely change, but they support what that individual with diabetes is doing for themselves, and they allow
Okay.
that space to happen.
Okay. Pamela, how about you? Or have there been ways that family and friends have been supportive?
Well, my husband's very supportive. Even though whenever my alarm goes off, he's still like, "What's that?" It's like, you know what that is. Me. Um, I would say the same things, like, to listen, right? To be supportive. And Yeah, I mean, those are the number one and number two things. I think that it's hard to do, like Gregory was saying, people see you eating, oh, you're not supposed to eat that. Well, when your blood sugar is really low,
Mhm.
you are like, there's a little bit of a confusion that kind of happens. You're not really processing for a second there, because your brain works on glucose. I don't know if people should understand that. So if you're like low, you are a little confused. You got to just eat something to like bring it up right away. Have some juice, and you don't want to argue about that. You know, like I know what I need when I need it, and even if I don't, even if I'm gonna sit there and like, oh yeah, I want some of that candy too, thank you. It's on me, right? This my body and my life, and I'm not going to argue with you because you feel like I should do this. Like you're an endocrinologist now, and you want to, give me a talking to. I can tell you, I did that with my daughter quite a bit, and it did not go well ever. You know,
Yeah.
I can only say, look, I think that you should do this, and maybe you shouldn't do that. But ultimately, it's her life, and she had to learn how to live it her way. So just being supportive, just listening, and not being a pain in somebody's butt, basically, And if you're going to invite me over for dinner, and you know me and you know I'm a type 1 diabetic, then, think about that. Like, are you going to serve all carbs for me? There's not going to be any vegetable. Like, I have a cousin who's a vegetarian. I make sure that there's something vegan there for her to eat. I make sure that there's a salad or there's, something for her to eat. If you love me and you're supporting me and you're inviting me to dinner, then have something there that I can eat,
Can I
So,
can I add a little funny story about what Carolina said about um, the family coming together and establishing, like, I guess, ground rules or whatever? When I first got diagnosed in 2006, yeah. So I said I was living with diabetes for 12 years. It's been much longer. I just can't count it. I just lose it.
It's late.
Anyway, when I got diagnosed, mom came around and we sat down as a family. My sister and I we were a year apart, so she's 12. Mind you, at that age, you don't really want to not eat certain things. The whole house's diet changed because of me. Like everyone's diet, and my sister hated me for it. Like she tormented me for it. She hated, like, she was like, "Why I gotta do this because of you?" But initially, like, having that support early on really helped. But then later on, things kind of like laxed out where everybody was on their own kind of thing. But that initial support, that initial help really, really did pay dividends. I just thought it was funny because my sister hated me for it.
I was going to say minus her. It was the support.
Mine is that part. Oh my goodness.
We do have a question in the chat. Eric Bailey wants to know, can a plant-based diet reverse the effects of diabetes, specifically diabetes 2? And
it can in certain ways. We have to remember that diabetes is going to really be heavily determined by the amounts of carbohydrates that you consume. And if you are going to be on a plant-based diet, but still are consuming high amounts of carbohydrates to where your blood sugars are out of target and not in normal range, then that's not improving your disease state as a whole. The reason why those protein foods that come from your lean protein sources and animal sources are going to be a little bit more conducive with lowering A1C is because of the fact that they don't have carbohydrates in them. Rather, they have protein in them. Right. So there are protein containing vegetables. Vegan, vegetarian diets can be perfectly fine and normal. There have been increased A1Cs by adopting a more vegetarian, vegan lifestyle and pattern. I'm not going to say that there has not, there is. But then again, it's going to come down to the load of carbohydrates that you are consuming, right? Whether that's coming from potatoes, corn, beans, breads, pastas. These are all carbohydrate foods, and those need to be accounted for when taking medication.
Okay. Carolina, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to add, I mean, one of the things that you could do is maybe keep track through an app, just because you want to make sure, like, Gregory said, yes, some vegetables do contain, like quinoa, some protein, and it is a complete protein, but it's not a high protein source because it does have more starch versus protein. So you just want to be very mindful of if it's a plant-based diet, that you have your macros, balanced.
Yeah.
Okay. And for our last question, it's so crazy. This has gone by so fast. This has been such a great combo. But What message would you leave our audience with about taking charge of their health? What advice do you have for anybody watching that's thinking like, gosh, I really need to change my stop putting garnish broccoli on my meals and stuff like that.
Um,
I'll
I'll,
start with you. Oh, okay. Go ahead,
I'm
Gregory.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
I'll say that, just get screened, especially if you have a family history of diabetes, if you know that your diet is not healthy, or, you know that you don't eat the best. Again, that family history is going to be one of the biggest things to really take note of. Get screened. When you go to the doctor, ask for an A1C test. That's going to take your blood, and as Dr. Woods talked about last week for part one, that's going to be the test that really helps to see where your blood sugars are at, and the overall state of your pancreas and what's happening inside of your body when it comes down to diabetes. You know, just for awareness and overall preventative care, getting that A1C check once a year at minimum would be a good recommendation if you're trying to really see where you stand when it comes to diabetes. Um, I think that's just my overall recommendation. Don't be afraid to get screened. Don't be afraid to actually get checked.
Mhm. Thank you. Carolina, you want to go next?
I agree with Gregory. I think that's the very, very first step. I'm gonna take it on the next step. Um, I I always, tell patients just move, right? More movement, whether that is getting up from your desk and going to the kitchen if you're working from home, going for a 10-minute walk. But anything, if you're watching TV, right, get up and do some, 10 crunches or 10 push-ups or something. But it doesn't necessarily have to be you have to go to the gym for an hour 5 times a week. It doesn't have to be that structured. At the end of the day, it comes down to how much your body is moving, so that way it's using up more glucose. Therefore, there's not a lot of a big spike. But the more you move, the better your blood sugars are going to be stable.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Before we get to you, Pamela, I see somebody, Emma had a question about when Gregory, you were talking about the A1C getting screened. She's asking fasting A1C or non-fasting.
Uh, Normally, it's done fasted.
Mhm.
A lot of
Okay.
providers will ask that you fast. However, I believe the technology is getting better to where
Yeah.
it can be non-fasted, but primarily I would just recommend it to be fasted to get the most accurate result.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Pamela, what message would you like to leave with our audience about taking charge of their health?
Well, I'll just build on it. So yeah, you should get your A1C checked, definitely. And not just once in a while. Like, if you feel like you don't live a really healthy lifestyle and everybody around you has got the sugar, then maybe you need to like maybe check your A1C at least once a year. More than that. And if you have checked it and it's high and you are exercising and moving like Catalina said, and you are eating right and still you have a high A1C, then ask your doctor, listen, can you just check me for LATA, give me a C-peptide test or a GATA antibody test, because I could have latent autoimmune diabetes in adults. I've heard about it. Can you just check and just make sure, because I am eating right? And if you don't, and your A1C is still high, then you're just not really eating right like you think you are. Maybe you're not moving like you think you are. A lot of people think that they're doing the right thing and they're not actually, doing it. Like eating right just once a week is not eating right. You have to like eat right all the time. And I can say for me, I eat now, I'll have a protein. I might have a salad or 2 vegetables. I really try to like eliminate that carb at dinner. Like you don't really need it, or just have a little bit of carb. If you do have diabetes, just don't have the carb at dinner. You don't really need it, especially if you had a sandwich at lunch. Like if I have a sandwich at lunch or a croissant sandwich for breakfast, I definitely don't have a carb at dinner. Like, be conscious of the carbs you're having all day. And that means fruits, that means breads, sushi, all of that, be conscious of all of that. Just be mindful, And you don't need those carbs. They're kind of addictive. And once you stop eating them all the time, you don't really want them all the time. It's really true. Like at this point now in my life, I'm not like craving them, except like arroz en gandules, stuff like that, and I'll have a little bit and I'll be happy.
I feel like Shamika,
Thank you. This is some great advice.
I feel like I gave the provider answer. I want to give the personal answer now to that same question.
Okay.
Like diabetes is really a lifelong journey. Like it really is. And I think that if we can take the beauty out of that lifetime journey, the more peaceful we'd be with ourselves, with our condition, right? There's so much good that can come with something that seems so bad that's supposed to last for the duration of your life. And I'm grateful that I've been able to adopt such a positive mindset when it came to my diabetes, that I'm just looking for opportunities to grow with it. Like honestly, it's one of those things where I feel like I'd be sad if I didn't have diabetes anymore. Like it's brought so much awareness and so much peace and so much like me being mindful to my life that honestly it's like a thorn in your side. Something that kind of torments you and hurts, but it still kind of shows you a bigger picture and gratefulness towards life. So just taking the beauty out of these small things that may happen, that may seem terrible, and knowing that a whole beautiful story can erupt out of that.
Thank you. That's a great way to wrap this up. This has been such a great conversation. I'm so grateful that you all shared your knowledge, your experiences, and were open and transparent. So for everyone else, if you have not already, make sure you go check out part 1 from last week of this diabetes discussion. We got into more about the neuropathy, more of the same of the diet and lifestyle. And it's a great conversation. So make sure you check that out as well. But for more information about diabetes prevention and management, head over to blackdoctor.org for articles and resources. Again, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. And thank you guys in the chat for your questions. And I hope everybody has a great rest of the week.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
You.
Have a great night.
Thank you.